the important things are, and we both talk about these things in our books, is you kind of, I'll just metaphorically say, and people use this expression before, you kind of have to make your bed before you go out and change the world. Like, you have to make sure other aspects of your life are going well. You can't be, for instance, in a really bad romantic relationship and then expect to go do stand-up comedy at night, or even go to work and be an entrepreneur in the morning and have everything be great, because your emotions are all entangled, and you're not going to be able to that muscle, or let's even view it as like a body, like an emotional body. It's clogged somewhere. So the emotions are clogged as they're going through this emotional body. So it's like you could have, to extend the metaphor, you could have like an emotional heart attack or an emotional stroke, where not a real stroke, but something that clogs you so that you can't live up to your potential. And so you have to make sure all your relationships are going as well as possible. You have to make sure your creativity is going as well as possible. Like your friend started journaling, and that got creativity muscles atrophy. But when you start journaling, or any kind of, start painting, journaling, composing music, whatever, your creativity muscles start to loosen up, they start to strengthen, and then suddenly he's like, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is how I can do it, because his creativity now was working better. It had that muscle had atrophied, or that body had atrophied his 15 years in aviation. Spiritually, like, do you have a sense of, sometimes I feel I'm blocked, I care what people think about me, or I care about, am I hitting some goal? When really you should just care about, like, am I getting better? Am I improving in the things that I love doing? And am I a good person? So that's, you could block yourself spiritually. And then physically, you need to be in good health. It doesn't mean you need to be like an athlete, but you need to sleep. Most people need to sleep 8 hours a day, eat pretty well, move around enough to get some exercise, because you're not going to be your full potential if you're sick. So, and all of these things I described are different variations of being sick. So physically sick, emotionally sick, creatively sick, spiritually sick. You have to make sure you're healthy, and then from there you start to get to know who you are a little better, because now you're at the point where you could be potentially your best.
Okay, that sounds really hard. And I think for most people hearing that, they're saying, how can I do that? Yes, my relationship is struggling, my health isn't good, but I'm so stressed out at work and trying to pay the bills, I have to put in overtime right now, I have zero creativity. We've all seen people and or been in that space. What is the one thing that you can do, or what is the first thing you can do to break out of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's been times when, like, I remember one time where my finances were a wreck, and I was scared to death. I mean, I was broke and I was scared to death, and my relationships were not so good, and there was no easy, I couldn't understand. I didn't even understand that they weren't going so well, and there was no easy fix. But just pick one thing. Okay, I'm going to make sure I sleep 8 hours a day. Whatever it takes, like blackout shades, don't look at the computer 2 hours, like none of these things I do right now, but I did then. I focused on one thing, which was sleep 8 hours a day. Don't look at your phone or any kind of screen for 2 hours before you sleep. Don't eat for the 3 hours before you sleep. Get blackout shades. Maybe read a little bit before you go to sleep. So I focused on 8 hours of sleep. I focused on eating a little better. I focused on taking a nice walk in nature. And suddenly my life's a little better because I'm doing that, as opposed to being physically sick as well as being emotionally sick. And then the next thing is, I would get these waiter's pads, and I got one on me right now.
James is pulling out a pad from, it looks like a diner.
Yeah. So they're great, as opposed to these like fancy moleskin or moleskine notebooks that cost $6,000. And these you could just buy for like 10 cents a pad, or I actually take them from the bar downstairs now that I
you own it, so you can't steal
it. so and then I would write, even if I'm not journaling, I'll write lists of 10 ideas, and that gets me more creative. So when I was going broke, I started writing down, I can't stop myself from going broke. Like the path that my money is on is happening. So how can I make more money? Instead of just like crying every day about my money, which I was actually doing, literally doing, I would say, okay, well, maybe I can get a book advance, or maybe I can start a new business, or maybe I can get a job for a little while at these 3 places, or maybe I can call these people who are friends of friends and get their ideas. And I would write these things down, and sometimes there would be a good idea, but really it was just practicing getting more creative again. And finally, things would start to click. Even if it was not an idea I'd written down, things would start to click just because in general, I would start to see more opportunities in life because my creativity muscle was going. So pick one thing and just improve it. And then in the process, you might see, oh, okay, yeah, my emotional life is not going so well. I can see this now because my creativity is noticing it, or my physical health's better, so I'm noticing it, or my spiritual health. Like you could practice, I care about what this person is saying about me to someone else. But being aware of that and catching yourself and thinking, you know what, it doesn't really matter. We're all gonna die in 50 years. Like he could say or she could say whatever they want, and trying to be above that and reading books that are. People think, oh, you have to meditate or pray or whatever. Sometimes just reading spiritual books makes me feel inspired, or watching an inspiring video or whatever, and then just thinking about what are the things that are really bothering me that I should rise above, and being aware of it. Even if they bother you, awareness is the first step. So taking that first step is maybe that's the only step you have to take.
The sleep point is massive, and I've learned so much recently about how important and how sleep affects your health, your well-being, your mental state. I mean, essentially everything. So it's an amazing point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and all these points are the same thing. But like sleep, you'll if you're only sleeping 4 hours a night because you're so busy, you're going to get sick. Maybe not when you're 20, but certainly when you're 30, 40, 50, like you'll get sick. You can't help it. Or if you don't eat so well. Or honestly, if you're in a bad emotional situation, you'll get sick more often than not. Or if you're not as creative, and then you're feeling like, oh, I hate my job, you'll get sick more often than not. Or if you're obsessing on what other people are thinking about you, or if you're obsessing about the world's going to collapse, because so many people half the country, one way or the other, was going to get depressed on election day because there was so much hate and anger.
Sure.
And I saw people get so depressed they got physically sick, and they stopped their writing projects, they stopped their podcasts. One friend of mine stopped his podcast, and I wrote to him, I'm not being political, but I said to him, you stopped your podcast because you're upset at what happened. So what's better? A world that you think is crappy without your podcast, or a world that's crappy with your podcast? And
great point.
So he's like, you're right, and he started up his podcast again. So being aware of the things that are causing you this angst, again, whether it's physical, emotional, creative, spiritual, this will just improve you. And like you said, it is hard, so just focus on one thing, whether it's sleep, or read an inspirational book, or write down 10 ideas today, or make a friend, or help somebody. So earlier we talked about happiness and how there's this base level of happiness. So whether you get sad or happy, people tend to go back to that base level. But you can raise that base level, it turns out, by helping people. So by actually doing service will actually increase in your body the base level of happiness that you'll return to.
Steve must have the highest level of happiness out of everybody.
No, I wouldn't say that.
but I think Steve does.
Not here now.
I think Steve does have a really high base level, higher than mine, a higher base level of happiness than mine. And so I remind myself of that, I should help people more. Because sometimes I get too into, am I achieving these different things on
You
on
help
things.
Millions of people with your books, your podcasts each week.
I think we have to remind ourselves, happiness begins where selfishness ends. And it just does.
That's a good Steve
Well
quote.
said.
That's a good point.
I have to stay on brand. But no,
and by the way, Heather,
James does.
I agree with you, but sometimes I don't always know that. I know it just how when someone comes up to you and says something, or you get an email. But I don't always know that, and again, sometimes I have to check myself. Well, am I doing too much of this one activity, which is not, when I. Sometimes investing doesn't help anybody, so that's why I switched from investing to writing. Or sometimes you have to make sure, are your activities, even the ones you're passionate about, on track for also put you on track for being a better person, and which increases your base level of happiness, which is important.
So important. You've spoken a lot about creativity, and that interests me because you, like me, had more of a linear path back in corporate America and around financial and driving revenue for other people, shareholders, stock in publicly traded companies. Then you made this pivot and got into this really creative world, stand-up comedy, writing, podcasting. Do you believe that everybody has a high level of creativity or some level of creativity? Because when I was in corporate America, I did not think I was creative at all.
Right, but you are very creative, right?
I agree. Now
I've seen you do so many creative things, like in various media, whether it's writing, of course, your appearances on media like television or podcasts or public speaking. You're creative on so many different levels. I think anybody, we're naturally creative beings. We have to be, because your ancestors 70,000 years ago wouldn't have survived if they didn't think, I can't find any food over here, so I gotta be creative. How am I gonna feed my tribe? I gotta look over here, but maybe there's lions, so I better pretend to be a bush sometimes. And I don't know, they were more creative than we are now on a daily basis, just for survival. But we've all got that same DNA in us. But I think for most people, those creativity muscles have atrophied. They'll atrophy in just a matter of weeks if you don't use them. So I always say, get a little pad. I get these waiters pads, and just write 10 ideas a day. It might be 10 ideas for businesses, 10 ideas for books. It might be 10 ideas for somebody else. I might think of, here's 10 ideas for Heather, or it might be 10 ideas for Amazon. So one time I wrote 10 ideas for Amazon's self-publishing unit, and I sent it to them, and they invited me to come out to Seattle and take a look at all their products before they were being released.
Amazing.
And so I did that for 10 ideas for LinkedIn. I got invited to go out to LinkedIn. 10 ideas for Google. I've been out to Google a bunch of times. So this sort of thing kind of builds and builds. Your creativity muscle expands until you're like literally bulked up. You're like an idea machine at that point. And it's incredible. And you start off with no creativity, thinking you have no creativity, and then suddenly just doing this for like 2 months, even you're more creative than 99.99% of people, because they're all thinking that they can't be creative, and you just did a little bit each day, and boom, just 10 ideas a day. So, and sometimes the ideas could be dumb. Like yesterday, I did 10 things that upset me about superhero movies. So, or 10 weird things about superhero movies. Like, I'm not going to give away any spoilers about the Avengers.
I haven't seen it yet.
But even if you saw the old Avengers, the old Avengers one, it's like an anti-climate change movie in one way of looking at it. Or Star Wars. It seems like the Sith are the globalists and the Jedi are states' rights people. And that, which is normally associated with things like racism and tariffs and all this kind of stuff. So it's just interesting ways of looking at these different movies that I don't think are so obvious, but make me think. So that was my list yesterday. It has nothing to do with creating businesses, but who knows? Maybe whenever you look at things in a new way, it might lend itself to some other opportunity.
So it's just taking action, focusing on creating creativity, and writing a list.
Yeah.
That simple.
Or other things work too. For me, that works. But like Julia Cameron's, in her book The Artist's Way, recommends what she calls morning pages. Just write without removing your pen from the page for 3 straight pages, and then never look at those pages again. That's the key. So you don't judge yourself at all. You're just exercising those creativity muscles.
When you give the example of coming up with ideas for Amazon or LinkedIn, and you sent these ideas to someone there, and they invited you back, that sounds really impressive to me. How do you go about figuring out who you're going to send something like that to?
Well, remember, if you've been exercising your creativity muscle and coming up with 10 ideas a day, every day, then it's going to naturally, your network is just going to build and build and build, because I can't come up with that many ideas for myself. So, so sometimes I will come up with ideas for other people, and I'll send them. I remember in that particular case, if I make the chain, maybe it was in 2010 or 2011, I wrote 10 ideas to an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur wrote me an email saying his business was failing and he had no idea what to do. And so I looked at his business and I wrote 10 ideas. Like I really researched it, and he was just blown away by the ideas. I'm not patting myself on the back. He sent them around to people. They were all excited. They started doing them and whatever. Then a friend of his was the head of a department of Amazon. So when I wrote 10 ideas for Amazon, I sent it to him. He sent it to his friend. So your network starts to build. And then things happen. By the way, most of my list, nothing happens. You can't have 3,650 good ideas a year. And if I come up with 10 ideas for Facebook, maybe I have nobody to send them to. So that just sits in my pad forever, doing nothing. I don't blind send them to somebody if I don't know somebody there. Or actually, maybe I do. But I don't know. With Facebook, I didn't. I have visited Facebook, but for other reasons. And, again, as you're exercising your creativity, one of the things that happens is you start to realize, the people I can communicate with is also bigger because now I have something valuable to give them. So I read an article, Airbnb was looking into producing original content. And this kind of was related to an idea I had where any website with a large amount of traffic is like a Netflix. Netflix was simply a website with a large amount of traffic. And now it's traffic with people interested in watching movies, but now we see Uber made a TV show produced by Spike Lee, and you can only see it on the Uber app. But and then I saw an article, Airbnb is looking at original content. So I came up with 10 show ideas for Airbnb, and I sent it to them, and some emails went around, and who knows? That's still in process. But it doesn't matter to me. I move on to the next thing. Like. I never hang my hat on one idea working. Like you always want to have multiple things happening. I diversify. So we've talked a lot about comedy, but I also write podcasts, and I'm still an investor, and I run businesses. So you keep lots of things going on.
It's a basic sales strategy. You have to have multiple pipelines full at all times if you want to achieve success.
But again, you can't. People might say, well, how can you realistically do it? You can't do that if you don't have if your romantic relationships are all awry, if you're sick in bed, if you're not creative, if you're not kind of. I hate to use the word spiritual because it almost sounds like too wishy-washy, but if you don't have a sense of like, okay, I need to just focus on my own improvement and the improvement of the people around me and not focus on every little detail on the planet, if your bed's not made, you can't be productive in other things. And again, like you said, it's hard to do all those things, but just focus on one then. That's all you need to do, and you're going to be better tomorrow than you were today.
And the challenge today is focus on getting 8 hours of sleep because it is a game changer for you.
Yeah, 8 hours of sleep. Or if someone's listening and says, I already do that. Okay, write 10 ideas down. Or try to eat a little better, whatever that means. Don't snack on anything like today. Like don't eat any junk food. Or take an extra 30-minute walk instead of watching a half-hour TV show. Or
spend 45 minutes with a brilliant man and get the opportunity to learn from James. And I'm so excited and grateful that you gave me this chance to sit with you, but I just got the high sign that I have to hit the road. So I'm so bummed out. I feel like I could talk to you for an hour and a half longer.
Well, you're always welcome to come back. I'm saying this is I'm on your show. So.
But we are in your comedy studio, your podcasting studio. So thank you so much, James. It means the world to me.
Well, Heather, thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm so glad you're starting this. I'm going to be excited to see how this evolves because again, you are so creative in every effort I've seen you do.
Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. And all my listeners, hang tight. I'll be right back to answer your questions. Thank you. How did it go?
Yeah, it's great.
Did it come out good, you think?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's some Steve.
Steve, yeah, but I'm sure that they can edit that stuff out, right?
Did Steve yawn? I don't
Steve
think Steve
went
yawned.
stomping out like, hello, rah!
No, I mean like he talks into the mic. I mean I included that in there, but generally it's pretty good. Yeah, it's actually really good.
Yay!
Around 48 minutes.
I could have talked to you forever. That was so. By the way, our show that I did on your